Dave, yeah, we can go ahead and get started. I'll just let people in as they pop up into the waiting room.
Okay, great. So we'll get started. This is the third session we've had with former Southern Arizona players. And, you know, it's really been, I think, a great thing for us. And the message I've heard already from the two prior people we've had on here, who were Luis Robas and Maddie Kinzer, is that, you know, even though you come out of Tucson, you can achieve big, big things. You know, Luis is obviously one of the highest profile MLS players that have come out of Arizona, but certainly out of Southern Arizona. And Maddie Kinzer was one of the most successful women's soccer players, especially in terms of playing in a major Division I soccer programs, not winning 2 state titles. And we're lucky enough to continue that trend by bringing in Henry Brauner, who I think it's safe to say has probably achieved the most of any Southern Arizona player as a coach. He's, you know, on through multiple levels of coaching, multiple jobs, multiple roles, and we'll get into those as we move forward. But he, you know, again, this is a kid who started playing out at Udall, played for Sabino High School, played in local clubs, you know, graduated on, played at Pima College, then went to school in outside Boston at Worcester, and you know, has decided when I'm playing that he was going to pursue a career in coaching, which at the time he decided to go the route. There wasn't really a great pathway. And I think what you'll hear from Henry is the fact that, you know, he's had to pay his dues. He's had to work his way up from the bottom all the way to the top. And now, of course, he sits in a very prominent role with the Seattle Sounders due his hard work and his quality. I'm not sure how many of the players that are currently on have, you know, played for Yosh, but there are quite a few within Tucson that have some type of experience with Henry. And I think he impacts the people he works with, and he impresses the people he works with, whether they're players or the coaches or administrators. And that is why he has achieved at a relatively very young age what he has achieved. So, you know, I was fortunate enough to get to know Henry when he was in high school, and then, you know, I've stayed in touch with him. And it's kind of funny in the sense that he used to play for me at Pima College, and he used to be my assistant coach. And within a matter of a decade, the roles have now reversed, where I used to be telling Yosh about soccer and how things should work. I now go to Yosh for information and make sure I'm doing things the right way, and I'm staying on top of the most current information. And he's been a tremendous role model. And for me, he's now taken on being a mentor and keeping me updated and educated in the game. So, you know, what I would like to start with is just for Henry to kind of outline his pathway to where he's at now. And if I'm confusing anybody, I'm sorry. I knew Henry when he was in high school. He was referred to as Yoshi, so I might slip in back that role and call him Yoshi. That was his name growing up. Of course, now he's a professional soccer coach who I should treat with a lot more respect, use his nickname. So his name is Henry. So Henry, first of all, most importantly, especially in these times, for those who don't know, Henry's in Seattle right now. And we all know that Seattle was one of the hardest hit areas early on. So I hope you're doing well and you're safe and healthy, Henry.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's like you said, one of the first most difficult places to potentially be about 4 to 5 weeks ago, but now, you know, things are trending in a better light, and, you know, hopefully, you know, everybody's back on the field here within, you know, months, hopefully, whereas before we were looking at things in a whole different light. But if I can just compound and amalgamate the point that Kaz made, is that, you know, I was very fortunate to be given opportunities within, you know, this game. I think for everybody that's in a coaching position on this call, a director position within the clubs, young coaches, even parents, players, you know, one thing you're going to realize about this game, regardless of where you are in your timeline, is that this game will pretty much give you everything good in your life. And that's the reality of what we do. So even though there was times when, yeah, you have to pay your dues, and yes, it's difficult, and yes, it might be frustrating, but the reality is every opportunity that I've been fortunate enough to have has been given to me by some of these people on this call. But more importantly, this game that we all are able to connect in and, you know, see and look at together, it's been it's been rewarding because it's given me pretty much everything good in my life, you know. So from that aspect, I appreciate being here today. And, you know, being from Tucson, Arizona, we all have a responsibility to make sure wherever we are, if we're in Tucson, in the trenches, working with the players, or, you know, we're still fortunate enough, such as Luis, to be playing at 35 years old at the highest level in this country. You know, Andy Kinsner going off to college. I mean, all these people have, you know, a different experience that they can share with you. So I hope that my experience that I can share with you today will not only maybe shed light into a deeper layer of the game, but more importantly, I hope for those players that might be on this call that I can inspire. And that's ultimately what we do here as coaches, as people that work in leadership roles within our clubs. That's our only job, is to inspire. And hopefully in this time that we're going through, in this current climate that is COVID, we are able to inspire people and able to help people, you know, maybe smile a little bit more at the end of the day. So that being said, I'm going to share my screen a little bit. I'm just going to do a quick little snapshot in terms of, I don't know what you'd want to call it, a coaching tree, coaching ladder. You know, right now I'm at the Seattle Sounders. This is kind of my visual pathway in terms of where everything started and where everything is right now. So like Kaz said, you know, right about here at this green border is when the realization came that playing the game at a high level was not going to be happening anymore, which is completely fine. And that's the reality of what we do. I probably should have realized that a little bit earlier, but the reality is this is when it happened. So from that point there, the person on this call, the person that was kind enough to give me that glowing introduction, he allowed me to be a volunteer assistant at Pima College. And at that time, the staff consisted of myself, Mike Corbis was the assistant coach at the time. I was the volunteer assistant, and cause I can't remember, I'm sure we had somebody with the goalkeepers. It might have been AJ Robles in a similar volunteer role, but we were very much a young staff in the sense that, you know, Kaz probably looked at us in relativity more closer to the players than he did himself, which was also very brave of him to offer us an opportunity to get to coach at a good level, to share in the passion that he has for the game and the joy that is what he does on a daily basis. So from there, that's where it started. Getting to learn, getting to see, understanding what it meant to look at the game from a different perspective. You know, player, you look at things from the runway, and as a coach, you have to look at things from 30,000 feet. That's the reality. And so that perspective gained, you know, allowed me to have a deeper passion, and it peeled back layers of that onion that eventually let me discover that this is something I think I wanted to do in the highest capacity possible. You know, so it all started there. So again, Kaz, thank you for that, because without this moment here, everything here does not happen. That's the reality. It's a butterfly effect. So from there, I was working at Pima, and then I was also helping at TSA, coaching teams there, helping as an assistant. I was doing things that, you know, allowed me opportunity to now grow as a person where I had my own group, I had my own team, I had my own players I was responsible for. And that's a completely now different perspective from an assistant coach. From there, you know, FC tUCSON, the PDL team that we had in Southern Arizona, that was also formed. And at that time, I was able to go into that role as an assistant at FC tUCSON. And I saw different experiences, different lights. I got to see the game through a different prism. And that allowed me, you know, opportunity to see, you know, okay, it's different. Coaching is unique. Every day is different. Every day is a challenge. And, you know, that's where I started to grow this, you know, passion for what I wanted to do. From there, got to work with Walter Sanchez at Tanque Verde Soccer Club. I'm sure there's some other coaches on the call right now. And in this role, I had a more, I think, first kind of leadership role in this game as a coach, being a technical director and, you know, more or less overseeing not only my team's development, but, you know, trying to help impact the other teams and other players in a capacity that, I knew I could. From there, that gave me, I think, my first opportunity with the MLS, Real Salt Lake. I was able to go into Real Salt Lake's academy, again, almost taking a step into a different light, where now I was back into being a assistant coach and being a person that, I was learning again in a new environment, but also on a foundation and a platform that was at that time the highest level of youth soccer in the country, playing in the developmental academy and coaching for an MLS academy. From there, I was fortunate enough to go to the Seattle Sounders for the first time. We'll get back to this, but at the Seattle Sounders, I was brought in to do, as a staff coach, work with the youth academy, but also be the head of recruitment for the academy through the USL team. So that was my first, more or less, invitation to professional soccer, in the sense that it's a coaching expectation now, and it's not just something that the players enjoy to do, it's now their job. So that was now an added dimension onto what it meant to coach in that type of category. From there, I was fortunate enough to go and be offered an opportunity with the U.S. men's national team. So I was able to become a youth national team coach, but also run the talent identification network for the western part of the United States. I had that role for about 2 years, and it was something that now, having all the experience come before me, I felt I was ready to come into that kind of role as a youth national team coach, playing in international events, representing the United States national team as a coach, and also, scouting and working in talent identification for the federation. That then brought me an opportunity to then come back to Seattle itself. And now I sit in the role that I am in right now as the director of player development for the Seattle Sounders. So that's where I am kind of right now. And this process here, this pathway, every opportunity, every moment, every struggle, every difficulty kind of prepared me for this. Because now I'm in a position where I can really impact not only the players in the club, the entirety of the club, but I have an opportunity to now share my experiences with different clubs in the area, share my experience with everybody on this call today. But, everything has been a timeline, everything's been a process. And, there was times when you just had to believe in the process, and ultimately that got me to where I am now. But again, it's one of the key factors, and this is very true, and I think Kaz alluded to this, is that there's situations when you can learn, there's situations where you can teach, and whatever your impact in the game at that moment, you have to remain a student of the game. Even if you are the most distinguished coach sitting in the Hall of Fame, there's always a moment when you can learn. So as long as you're always willing to be a student of the game, there's always going to be another opportunity. The moment that ends, that's when the timeline stops. So that's kind of my process pathway to this point. And then I think I'll stop sharing my screen and send it back to Kaz.
Okay, appreciate it, Henry. So what we'll do here, how this will work today, it'll be a little similar like the other ones. I have some questions I want to ask of you, and hopefully that'll only take up about another 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll open it up for all the questions from anybody who's logging in and watching or just listening to the broadcast. So with that said, if you would, Henry, just what is your role right now with the Sounders? And I think a lot of people would be interested to hear a little bit more about what your role was with, again, U.S. men's soccer, and what a prominent role that was and what an important role that was.
Yeah, so to start on the, maybe I'll reverse it. I'll go with the role with the national team first, and then I'll build into the role I have now with the Sounders. So with the national team, I was basically in charge of the talent identification network for the western part of the country, including Mexico and South America. So what that means is any player that was eligible to play at a U15 through under 23 national team level, I basically managed and ran the scouting network, which consisted of roughly, 72 scouts at that time. So that was part of the role. It was a dual role in that. And then the other part of the role was working as a youth national team coach. So having the opportunity to coach in a youth national team World Cup, having the opportunity to coach at CONCACAF qualifying, having opportunities to coach with the U15s, U16s, that was kind of my role with the federation. Now, that opportunity led back into the role I have now with the Sounders, which is the Director of Player Development. So my role as the Director of Player Development is basically I have to more or less oversee and manage the ecosystem that is the entire development pathway of that club. So everything that falls under that development pathway is our reserve team, our U23 team, our PDL team, our entire academy, high performance departments, medical departments. So basically managing the heads of the departments in the ecosystem and making sure that the gears are turning towards a more fruitful type player that we're looking to produce in this country. So once they're finished in the developmental phase of the club, that's when they graduate from more or less my oversight and into the first team. That is the first moment that they will, not be hearing my voice yelling at them on a constant daily basis.
Okay, great. So, Santiago, I see your chat question, and it's a really good question, only in the sense that that's kind of a question I have for Yosh here in a little bit. So I agree with your question. So we'll get to that in a moment. So don't think we're just ignoring your question, but we'll stick with the U.S. National team for now, if you will, Henry. So my question to you would be is, what does the future look like for the U.S. national team? Obviously, in theory, there's World Cups coming up. And in particular, I think there's a big one coming up in the United States / Canada / Mexico here, within, what is that, in 2028, is it?
26.
26. So my guess is U.S. soccer is probably really gearing towards and building towards the 2026 World Cup. And then if you would maybe kind of what, as a scout, what you were looking for and / what U.S. soccer is looking for in their youth soccer players now.
Yeah, I think, ultimately what the national team is looking like is, we're going through this transition period right now. A lot of people, complain about, the qualification and lacking qualification for the last 2018. But I think, the reality of that is that without that moment in that timeline, we will not have made the strides that we will in the next couple of years. So I think 2018, not qualifying for that World Cup really, hit the reset button in terms of what are we doing as a country, what are we doing as a federation, how are we building towards what we want to get to. And so we were in a position where, because of that moment, everybody had to kind of look at each other and understand that, okay, we need to be better. The world is evolving. We haven't evolved. And because of that, a new coach was brought in, a new methodology, a new process, a new framework. And Greg Berhalter, in terms of a person that is evolving in the game day by day, he's a person that will then take that next evolution that is the national team. And so in 2022, the idea is that we go a little bit younger. We balance the age of the roster with the youth and what we are in terms of a country, in terms of what the culture is in the United States. And that's a winning culture. That's a mentality, and we had to almost get back to what made us successful in the beginning so that we can still be successful in the future. There's a couple ingredients that always need to be there. And there's a couple, key qualities that identify with an American soccer player, whether that's a male or female. You're always going to get bravery. You're always going to get fight. You're always going to get hard work. You're always going to give a relentless attitude, a never say never, never die type mentality. And that's something that maybe we lacked a little bit in that last qualification phase. And, because 2018 happened, we had to reevaluate. And now we've pushed forward, created new roles, been in a position where we had to evolve to keep up with the rest of the world. And so that's kind of where the future lies.
Okay, great. Thanks. So then let's take it a little bit more local then, if you will, Henry. So, and going back to Santiago's question about So
Yeah.
what does it take for a player in Tucson, Arizona, or Southern Arizona, because we obviously draw kids from all over the Southern Arizona area, you know, if they wanted to play MLS, what would the attributes, what would the expectations be of a youth player coming up, and what would give them the best opportunity to be successful?
Yeah, let me share my screen again. All right. Okay, so what you're looking at now is, this is the first step. This is something that Seattle Sounders Network Scout, this is something that will move across all phases of the club. These are the key qualities. This is a key quality document. And what this key quality document is, it's more or less a framework or a guide for what the future player within the club will look like. So if we had to look at a player like a Jordan Morris or a Christian Roldan, and then we have to reverse engineer their qualities into what it might look like when they're 12, 14, 15, 18, 19, 20. This is what that is. So there's 6 key qualities here. Okay, perception, ownership, initiative, mentality, technical, physical. Okay, optimal, technical, optimal, physical. So overarching, okay, this is why these are at the top, the perception part. Okay, reads all defensive moments, reads all offensive moments, initiate pressing moments, senses danger before the moment. Okay, so this is a key quality based on a more defensive-minded player. Okay, so these key qualities, some of them go across the board in terms of offense, defense, but this is something we can look at if we're going to evaluate, say, a future center back for the Seattle Sounders or a future number 6 for the Seattle Sounders. This would be the key qualities for that position. Okay, so perception first, game awareness, soccer IQ, whatever verbiage, whatever language you want to choose, you know, perception is the most important quality in a future player. And that can be through the national team, that can be for the MLS, the highest level, but the perception aspect becomes the most critical part of what the future game will demand. Ownership, full investment in the team, making all decisions team first ahead of the individual. So what I'm trying to say to the maybe players on the field is, or sorry, on the call is, if at any point you're making a decision for yourself ahead of the team, you're probably not going to have success at a higher level. That's just the reality. Every decision you make on the field at a higher level, all decisions must be made for the team and then the individual. That is our definition of what a key quality for ownership might need. Okay, initiative. Again, we're looking at a maybe center back, they initiate actions, preventive defensive actions. They will control the transition phase of the game. They'll be proactive in how they move. They won't react. If they sense danger, the ball's going to turn over. They will take preventive defensive action to put out the fire, I guess is a better way to say it. The mentality, okay, focus for 90 minutes, leadership qualities, intensity in all actions, optimal technical qualities that are needed at the highest level, extreme range of passing, smart touch, take space with the ball. Okay, smart touch means, look, I think a lot of the players on this call, you're doing a lot of stuff, you know, unopposed technical work in your backyards and everything and in your homes, which is fantastic, and that's what you need. But eventually, you're going to have to then evolve that smart touch and, evolve that good touch into a smart touch. And what that ultimately means is, if a ball is played to your feet and there's a defender within 5 yards ready to put in a tackle, will your touch either settle it at your feet or will your touch take you into space? And these are the finite differences between good touch, smart touch, good player, great player. Okay, these are these moments that we're looking for. And then obviously optimal physical qualities of the future game. You're going to have to be powerful. You're going to have to generate power. You're going to have to be a natural mover. Okay, your timing is going to have to be very good because everybody else on that field is going to be in that same physical category. Okay, and you're going to have to be able to win the ball back in your transition regains. So if we're looking at what a player might look like in a specific profile, this might be a center back, a holding midfielder, outside backs. You know, these are some of the key qualities that might go into that specific profile for that specific position. And all these things are a little bit different based on if you're a winger, based on if you're a attacking midfielder. But the one thing that remains are these 6 key qualities here perception, ownership, initiative, mentality, optimal technical and optimal physical qualities, these go across the board. Whether you're a 12-year-old, 22-year-old, whether you're playing in a PCJSL game, an Arizona State League game, an ECNL game, or representing your country in a World Cup. These are things that will always transcend across that landscape.
Okay, great. So, kind of the last question, and, it's almost a two-part question, if you will, Henry, and you may not have a whole lot of the information. Unfortunately, I was looking at your last slide, and it had, CenturyLink Stadium in the background, and it was empty, which is kind of the way things are right now in soccer, not only in the United States, but across the world. So in the short term, what is the MLS? What is your guess? What are you hearing in terms of MLS for this year? But more importantly, in the big picture, where MLS was, what are we on? Is it the 20th or 25th year that we were supposed to be doing with the MLS this year?
25, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 25. Where it started, where you saw it when you first started to get involved, and where you think it's headed, in terms of quality of the league, quality of the homegrown players, success of the league. Obviously, it's expanding and, doing up until this point has been doing really, really, really well. And, you're starting to see places like Minnesota, LAFC come in, and they're getting 30,000 to a home game. I think you once told me that the best environment, or maybe it was the RSL players when they were down here for preseason, we're talking about the best environment in MLS right now is LAFC's home games. But you're also getting 70,000 to home games in Atlanta. You're actually outdrawing the Atlanta Falcons with the Atlanta soccer team. So where do you see the future of MLS going?
Yeah, I think, again, you're going to see another kind of evolution that kind of was, jump-started by the failure to qualify for the 2018 World Cup. I think that moment, again, is going to have, good implications moving forward. I think you're going to see clubs now are going to start to invest heavy into the youth player landscape. I think we've seen a couple players within our youth national teams, under 20s, under 23s, they're now playing over in Europe, and one player in particular is becoming and approaching a world-class level. He's not there yet, regardless of what people say. He's just not. That's Christian Pulisic. I think he can get there, but to term him world-class is probably a little bit premature at this point. But a player like that, going for 60 million transfer fee from Borussia Dortmund to Chelsea, that's a situation where now the global market for soccer, which is, call it what you want, maybe inflated at times, but the global market is now America. Whereas in the past, players here and there would go to Europe, players here and there would maybe go from the MLS into a foreign league. But now, because of the amount of players playing overseas and having success, such as Christian Pulisic, probably leading that pack in terms of, multi-million-dollar transfer fee. The next one's probably a Weston McKennie playing at Schalke. His value on the transfer market right now is about $23 million. So you're starting to see the academy bear fruits in that sense. The academy system that produced the Pulisic, that produced the Weston McKennie. Another Arizona player, Richie Ledesma, that I had a opportunity to work with, at Real Salt Lake. He's in the reserve team at PSV, and he's another player that's valued at a very, very, very high cost in terms of what we look at in terms of an international benchmark for the top U23 players. It's not surprising anymore that there are a handful of American players that are in that category. So I think what you're going to see, to answer the question, is you're going to see a lot more money invested into the youth landscape of the United States by the owners, just because of the subsequent and the possibility of now becoming a seller on that global market, which is one of the most, call it what you want, but in terms of global market economics, if you're buying players, selling players in that realm, you're doing pretty successful as a club, organization, business, whatever you want to call it.
Great. Okay, so what I'll do now, if it's okay with you, Henry, is we'll do a little question and answer. So Walter, who kind of runs the show here, he will now start to ask for questions from people watching. So if you want to, put your question in the chat, then Walter will on you, open up your mic, and you can ask the question directly to Henry. So I think the first one, if I see it right, Walter, is a question
Yes.
from Zach.
Zach, yes.
So if you,
Zach.
Walter, you take it from here.
I'll take it from here.
Thank you, Walter.
You're welcome, Dave. Zach, go ahead and ask Henry your question.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like what's the best thing for me going up against defenders near goal? Like I kind of struggle with that. Like anything from a coaching standpoint, I guess.
Yeah, I think the most important moment that happens is the action right before the goal. Okay, and that action might be a cross, it might be a dribble, a 1v1, it might be a ball that gets slipped in behind. I think your most important moment before that action is you have to get unmarked. That's the biggest thing. So getting unmarked is one of the, I guess, elite traits, elite skills that, the top level players have. How you get unmarked can be done in a multitude of ways. It can be with the ball at your feet to dribble. It can be a quick movement to separate yourself from the defender. It can be a movement that maybe pulls a defender where you want them so that you can run maybe in behind them. I think the most important thing is getting close to the goal. You got to get unmarked. If you're not unmarked, you can't score. And then the next thing is hopefully you get the chance to score. But that won't happen unless you're able to get unmarked in those final moments of phase of play.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody else? Feel free to go ahead and enter your question. Santiago, I know Coach Dave asked your question. Did that make sense to you, or did you want to ask something else? Santiago Acosta.
It did make sense.
Okay, good. Excellent. So please feel free to text or in the chat there, go ahead and put your question in there. We'll gladly address it. So Coach Henry, while we're trying to get some questions here, I have a question for you. So in the time that we have right now, kids, they're at home. They're not really having that kind of training. What do you recommend? Maybe not so much a specific drill, but what do you recommend for them in this period of time?
Yeah, I think, and this is a message that hopefully rings true with everybody, and not just the players, but also the people on this call. We're in a right now where, we have almost more time than we know what to do with. And that's very, very irregular from the normal pace of life as a coach and as a youth player. That's the reality. So I think the biggest thing I can say to all the players on this call right now is if you don't come out of this being better at every deficiency or every weakness you had in the game, whether that's being able to hit a ball with your left foot, controlling a pass with your left foot, okay, your overall technical capacity as a player. If you don't come out of this a better player from a technical standpoint, okay, I don't think you've maximized your time. Okay, because the reality is every single day, every youth player in this world right now is in your same situation, not just the country. Think of it much bigger, the landscape of the entire world, okay? You have an opportunity every single day to either become a little bit better, okay, or you become a little bit worse. Because everybody else working hard for whatever that goal is, they get a little bit better, and in relativity, that makes you and that separation become greater and greater. So my advice to you is, you've heard your coaches say it, hey, you know what, I think your left foot needs to improve. I think your heading needs to improve. I think your control, when you're controlling a ball out of the air, needs to improve. I think your ball striking needs to improve. I think your first touch needs to improve. All of these dimensions that you can do with yourself, a ball and a wall or a garage, if you don't come out of this in a better situation than when we entered this, okay, you're going to be even further behind than when we even started. That's the reality. Everybody is doing the same thing right now, unopposed technical work. So it's your opportunity to separate yourself a little bit more, so when you get back onto the field, you'll be in a better position. And that goes for also everybody on the call as well that isn't a player. Okay, if there's something you wanted to do, download the Duolingo app, learn a new language, you know, become a better coach, look at the game in a different way. You have an opportunity, read a book, whatever that is. Okay, we can all, I think, grow, not just the players in this space.
That's excellent. And I couldn't agree with you more. That was stated perfectly. Todd, you have a question for Henry. Please go ahead. Todd B. Yes, go ahead.
How you doing?
Hello.
So my question to you, sir, is what have you heard being in the upper echelons of the sport within the MLS framework as to the likelihood that Phoenix Rising may see one of the next expansion spots for an MLS club?
Yeah, I think that's the goal of the club is they want to provide a market for that. Regarding if the possibility is real, I couldn't tell you. I think everybody's been put into a scenario right now where there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of anxiety. I think a lot of things have potentially been put on hold. So regarding Phoenix Risings or anybody, Madison Forward, Miami FC, you know, a lot of these clubs that are in that landscape, San Antonio FC, in that same USL Championship division, it's going to be, you know, where it goes from here, I'm not sure. But I know that's the aim and the goal of the club, to have an MLS franchise in Phoenix, but more importantly in Arizona. But that's something I unfortunately don't have the answer to.
That's quite all right. Thank you.
No problem.
Eric, you have a question for Coach Henry?
Yes. How many hours a day as an 11-year-old should I practice?
How many hours a day should you be training as an 11-year-old?
Yeah.
Okay. How many hours a day are you training right now, Eric?
About in 30 minutes to an hour.
30 minutes to an hour. Do you think 30 minutes to an hour is enough? You tell me, be honest.
No.
Okay. What do you think is enough?
Maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2.
Maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2. Yeah, I think that's that's maybe more realistic. I think you're in a situation like right now, you might have an hour and a half to 2 hours to be able to do a little bit extra. I think we have to be careful because, you know, the quality of what you're doing over the quantity is always going to be important, regardless of what you're doing, whether you're in this game, school, anything to that nature. But I think, Eric, if you feel that after 45 minutes you've accomplished something and you've become a better player, okay, I think 45 minutes was good. If you feel that it took you an hour and a half the next day, I think that's what you have to do. I think you're the one that is going to have the control of that. I think one of those key qualities, if you remember from that slide I showed you, was ownership. Okay, and ownership means taking responsibility for your development. And I know you're a young kid, but I think that's one of the biggest factors in the future game, is which players are willing to take that ownership right now in this space and in this current climate. Okay, your coaches aren't necessarily there in terms of the contact hours on the field, okay, with you, explaining exactly what they want to see. They're helping program you, they're helping you and giving you exercises right now, but ultimately the ownership and the autonomy, that's going to be on you, Eric. I think you have to decide every single day before you go to bed, did I become a better player? Did I stay the same, or did I get worse? And as long as you can always answer, I got better, then that's the amount of time you need to spend.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jay Hardman, you have a question for Coach Henry.
Yeah, so just curious, how do high level or U.S. Soccer, how do they look for talent? You know, as a talent recruiter, is if somebody wants to get noticed, is there something they should be doing? Things they should be doing to like camps, or is there a process or a procedure to get exposure, or is it kind of just cream rises to the top? If you're really good, you just get noticed.
Yeah, I think the opportunities are a big part of this. I think to answer your question, it depends on the age group, right? Like the youth national teams in the United States start scouting at U14. Okay, so in Arizona alone, there's 5 network scouts that are responsible for covering the landscape in Arizona. And that's every ECNL, ODP, state league, whatever league is being played. These 5 scouts are responsible for the identification of talent within, each of their regions and each in their areas. Now, regarding what they should be doing, they should do exactly what they're doing in their environment, because that's ultimately what's going to get them into that next environment. Okay, they don't have to be anything they're not. They don't all of a sudden have to turn on the light switch. What they do, how they work, their ability to learn, these are things that these scouts will look for. And if they see, or the talent identification process works where if there's something that catches the eye, if there's something that these players are involved in, or they see, then they dive a little bit deeper and towards contacting the coach, speaking with the coaches. From there, they might speak to the counselors at the school. What type of person is he? It's not just about being a very good soccer player. There's a different dimension to that, is that to represent the U.S. national team, you also have to be a very good person as well as a very good player. And that's when you have a unique person, is that when you have those 2 components that can work together, then you have something unique. And then, to answer the question directly, everything the kids are doing right now, playing, doing what they love, that will be noticed. Okay. And then that's kind of how that process works.
Thanks.
Yeah.
These are good questions. Olivia had a question for Coach.
Yes. In all of your experience, what would you say is the biggest difference between a good defender and a great defender?
Okay, a good defender and a great defender. It's a good question, Olivia. Ultimately, regarding defending and, regarding that topic, I think, for all when I say collective, I mean a team. Okay, so for all the team moments, okay, your coach wants you to defend like this. Your coach wants you to press them in their half of the field. Your coach wants you to defend in your half of the field. For all those moments and those team tactics that everybody works on, Olivia, there comes a moment when it becomes an individual duel, a 1v1 duel. All of a sudden, everything's been done the right way. Your team is tracked back. You've done everything you can defensively, and now you're 1v1 with a striker, 20 yards from goal. One of 2 things happen. You win the duel, or the attacker wins the duel. So in every single game, the difference is if you can dominate your duels, meaning you win a majority of those confrontations with the player that you're directly responsible for, that will make you great. What will make you good is if they gain an edge, if the person you're directly responsible for has an impact in the game. Okay, and what I mean by that is there's players that can affect an opponent, and then there's players that can affect the game. Okay, so even if they maybe beat you 1v1, you're able to recover and not get beat so that they don't score. So as long as you can contain that player and keep them from affecting the game, I think that's the difference between good and great. The minute the player you're responsible for starts to affect the game as well as you, that's the difference.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good questions again. As we're waiting for another, we got just a couple more minutes here, Henry. I don't know if you would like to just kind of close it. Oh, wait, one last question here. Yeah, go ahead, Louis. Unmute yourself, Louis. Louis. Louis, hold on. Let me help you. I'm trying to help. Not helping. There we go.
I'm here. I'm in the
Go ahead,
middle of
Louis.
eating. All right. So,
Oh, that's why you were fighting me. All right, no worries.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So,
My
Henry, real quick. Uh, how are players initially identified for the national program? Do coaches recommend the players, or are they just discovered during an ODP or DA game?
Yeah, I mean, it comes from everything. Sometimes a coach does recommend a player, you know. Those 5 scouts that work in the state of Arizona, as well as the person that kind of oversees that region and everything, they know all the coaches, they know all the personalities. I think sometimes players will recommend a player for the benefit of the club, not necessarily for the player. And these scouts know that. They know, hey, when this guy calls me, I got to sit on a phone for 30 minutes and listen to him about he's got the next best thing. He's got the next Becky Sauerbrunn. He's got the next Lionel Messi, whatever you want to call it. Okay. And then there's other coaches where when the phone rings to that scout, they listen. And everything that is, outside of that, the parameters such as ODP, state league games, PCJSL, ECNL, DA, all these events, all these platforms, they're scouted, by U.S. national team scouts. So there's no real fast lane to get there. It's just more about believing in the process and continuing to work hard. And as a player, even if you're not getting opportunity at this stage, it doesn't mean you're not going to get opportunity at a later stage.
Yeah.
Once that player is identified by the U.S. Network Scout, they get brought into what they call Youth National Team ID Centers. So in the state of Arizona, there's about, 3 to 4 YNT ID centers per year. And that's where all the scouted players that have been scouted, that have been tracked, that have been, watched a little bit closely by these network scouts and regional talent identification people, they get brought into, a training session, basically. And now they're a little bit more under the microscope from there. And then it's a process of, okay, if these guys do well in ID centers, they look at what's the next step for this player. Do we invite them into like a regional national team camp? Do we bring them into a full-on domestic national team camp? So any of those platforms you mentioned, DA, ECNL, PCJ, it's all an opportunity.
And do you, like with your slide of the KQ?
Yep.
Are the players basically evaluated based on those kind of standards right there?
Pretty much. That's the start. That's the starting point. Like if you catch a network scout, it's because of one of those 6 key qualities you showed like a serious aptitude for. The best one, most important one is obviously the perception part, the soccer IQ, the game awareness. If that is seen, that is the direct indicator to future talent. I mean, you have to be incredibly clever and incredibly intelligent to play soccer at the highest level. And so that's why that key quality is at the top, is because that is one indicator of future talent, is that game intelligence factor. Yeah. Now, as you get older, you have to gain the other things. The technical part, absolutely. The initiative, absolutely. Eventually, everybody grows and you become that physically complete player that you were, grown to be. So, but most importantly, if they're looking for any one special characteristic, it's the intelligence. That will always be the first thing. YNT, MLS, college, whatever you want to call it, whatever next platform there is, that is the most critical component to it.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Of course.
Henry, we have just a couple minutes here if you'd like to say some last minute things, and then we'll close it out and then about our evening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last thing I'll say, I'll just try to echo a couple of things that I said earlier. I just, I want to say thank you to everybody that is here. I think, again, these are opportunities like we talked about to hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you took something away from this. Hopefully you're in a position now where, what you thought about the game, maybe you look at it in a different light now. And that's what's most important for us here. I think we spoke to the players about if you don't come out of this a better technical player based on the amount of time you have to work directly with the ball, then you're not helping yourself achieve whatever next goal that is. And I think the same goes for all the coaches on the call as well. You know, we have an opportunity now. We wanted to study the tactical side of the game a little bit more. Well, okay, on Amazon, I can go buy Inverting the Pyramid. Okay, I can buy a book based on the entire tactical analysis of every single formation and system in the modern game. I can read it. I can maybe grow. You know, these are all opportunities that we have right now in this climate, in this landscape, that, you know, we have to become better coming out of this. If we don't, we're not helping ourselves. And ultimately, if we're not helping ourselves as coaches and leaders and educators, then we're not helping our players. And then that's the biggest disservice is all. So I just want to say thank you again to Kaz. All of this started because of that opportunity he gave me at Pima. And for that, I'll always be grateful, because that gives me the opportunity to maybe impact the lives of different players, because he was willing to impact my life at that point. So thank you.